Our next guest spent 20 years of his life serving in the United States Air Force. He reached the rank of lieutenant colonel and had a lot of insight into the world of Washington, as well as not just the military, but he was at one time the Air Force liaison to Capitol Hill, and he served as the administrator of the Shuttle Challenger Commission. I mentioned earlier that he worked with author Tom Clancy, the two of them together, in planning the big celebration on the 175th anniversary of the battle at Fort McHenry, which led, of course, to the writing of the national anthem. His resume could go on, and the show would be over by the time I finished citing it all. But we're joined this morning by Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil on Top Story. And first of all, welcome back to our show.
Well, as I often say, or always say, it is a pleasure to be part of your show from time to time.
I was thinking about you the other day. I was just telling you off air the weather's getting better here, and I can remember. But I was being on a diet. You think about food a lot, and I was thinking about hamburgers and French fries. Like pub fare. And I remember that day. It was about 80 degrees. We were coming back from a barbecue for the wounded at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. This must have been about 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago. And we stopped at a pub in Denton, Maryland. Remember, it had that sort of cockeyed door going in on the corner.
Yeah.
And it was about 80 degrees, and we sat out at the on the sidewalk cafe. And Sunday mornings in little tiny Denton, or Saturday, it was Saturday evening, I guess, in little tiny Denton, Maryland, there's no traffic. So we sat there in that light breeze. It was 80 degrees. I haven't seen 80 degrees in I don't know how long. I really.
Well, it's funny how it's the little things that we really miss.
And last week you had some good weather, and you went to meet a friend in Dover, which of course most people know from Dover Air Force Base, and the president was recently there as well. We You met with a friend, and after you had lunch, you came outside, and there was a discussion between the two of you about how it seems every other day now you look up and you see that the American flag is flying at half staff, and the comments between the two of you apparently were, it's gotten to the point any longer where it's lowered so often it doesn't really have any meaning anymore. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, it's very clearly stated by statute that the who, when, where, and why the flag should be flown at half staff, and it's become it's a matter of showing respect to those individuals who have made a significant impact or contribution to our country in whatever form of service it might be. But now it has been, I say, denigrated to the fact that, if the dog catcher for some county dies, with the flags lowered at half staff for 3 days, not to take anything away from that person, they're dead, but it takes away from the true meaning and impact of seeing the flag at half staff.
I don't mean to denigrate dog catchers either. I had a friend, she did it for a sheriff's department, and I watched her wrestle one day a pit bull that was very nasty, and I thought I wouldn't want to do that. But the idea in the beginning, and I think you clarified that President Eisenhower, was it Eisenhower that issued some guidelines? This was meant to be very narrow.
It wasn't until actually 1954 there was really no regulation existed for flying the flag, and there were a lot of conflicting policies. So it was on March 1st, 1954, that Eisenhower issued a proclamation for the proper times, and I can read just a little bit of that section. The flag should fly at half staff for 30 days at all federal buildings, grounds, and naval vessels throughout the United States and its territories. After the death of the president or a former president, is to fly 10 days at half staff after the death of a vice president, chief justice, or a retired chief justice of the Supreme Court, or the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Um, but now we've gone on to really extend that to county dog catchers, if I may use that that analogy.
I can see where some local officials may make a call on somebody who is prominent on the local level now and then, but it does seem. I mean, when I've been traveling, I've noticed sometimes nationwide that we lower them for all sorts of individuals. And yes, there may be some people out there who did some wonderful things and played a prominent role in the history of the country, but the notion was again that Eisenhower saw it as being a very limited use. That there would be other ways to honor these people other than lowering the flag.
Well, I think if it's a state official or anyone who the governor might want to honor for their service to that particular state, then fly the state flag at half staff. Um, and as one suggestion, I would have in order to preserve the impact of the American flag. Um, and that's where I really have come to the point where I don't like to see the flag at half staff if it's the county dog catcher.
I was watching television a few years ago when the former hockey player, a great hockey player named Jean Beliveau, died, and he had been offered the title of Governor General of Canada, turned it down. He'd been offered an opportunity to serve in the Canadian Senate and turned it down. But he was quite a legendary figure in his country. When he died, they had a huge funeral. It was not a state funeral, but a huge funeral, and his coffin was draped in his team's flag, which I didn't realize they had a team flag. But there you go. There's an alternative we could perhaps look at in this country. So when somebody who made great contributions to our culture past, something other than the American flag could be used. I mean, I can see it obviously for the funeral of a police officer, firefighter, anybody in public safety or the military who loses their lives. Um, but all it's, it's not just the flagpole itself; it's how you actually drape someone's coffin. All of these things could be taken into account. For instance, Twin Falls has a city logo. You could drape that over a coffin, but it just seems that we're going to get to the point where the flag is perpetually at half staff if this type of approach continues.
Yeah, and there is another part of that section of the flag code that does say the president can order the flag to be flown at half staff to mark the death of other officials, former officials, or foreign dignitaries. But it has to be the president who orders that to under whatever circumstances he or she may deem pertinent. But now we've got everybody and his brother who uses that as beyond what it was its original intent, and so that's where I come down on the side of let's get back to honoring those who half staff the flag at staff at half staff should be flown.
9:15, and our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil. He's joining us this morning on Top Story with Bill Colley. I'll get my voice back in a minute. With Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Glad you're here to do some of the talking, by the way. For some reason, I've got a little tickle in the throat. Must be the weather changing again. I got to ask you, as long as you're with us today, General Flynn resigned during the course of the overnight. Um, what was your take on that when you got the news?
Well, I certainly was in no way surprised that that was the case. Once you lose the respect of the president, or certainly in that critical position, you don't you shouldn't be serving the country or the president in the capacity that he was. He was an individual who should certainly have known better, in my mind. And And any foreign policy, if he had remained, every decision made in his capacity or by his advice to the president would be suspect. And so he had no other choice than to. The president had no other choice than to ask for his resignation.
And I've heard that he may not have broken any laws, despite what some Democrats are saying. However, that he was an embarrassment to the president and vice president, and for that reason, especially as a military man, he had to go.
Well, he did break, and I don't know what the law is, but he did break a tenet of some law that says that a private citizen cannot negotiate with foreign powers in any capacity. Our policy, or negotiate, or discuss, or bring it up with them, and he violated that as well. I don't think he'll be prosecuted for it, but he could have been, as I
Yeah,
understand.
tough case to prove, I think, is to the degree that he had to. They went into depth on the sanctions. Uh, Also,
Yeah,
Hal Moore
yeah,
died.
but but what we've also found out is that he has been under surveillance starting back in the Obama administration
Right.
when he was DIA, and so there's more to it than just this one particular infraction, I think.
I don't think he trusted President Obama, but then I didn't either. Uh,
Well, my sympathies are with him, but in any event, there was some reason that he was under surveillance. I would hope, other than political.
we got about a minute to go. Hal Moore passed away over the weekend. Did you ever have a chance to? He was a great man, obviously. Did you ever have a chance to actually meet him?
No, I didn't.
He certainly was a legend in the military, though.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, I certainly knew of him, but I never got to meet him.
I just my knowledge of him really comes from the book, as well as seeing the movie and Mel Gibson portrayed him. But when I read that we lost 71 men in that battle, and the enemy lost over 1,000, I mean, it's just astounding that
Oh, it is.
that we were able to withstand such an onslaught, and yet these Americans, obviously, it came down to training and good leadership.
That's what it really comes down to at the end, and so many things that impact us, our lives.
Well, I was going to say, after you did this for 20 years, it probably helped order your life every day from then that point on.
Uh, and this may be a discussion for another time, but I didn't really know this, but there is a flag desecration amendment that has been proposed by Congress, and that gets down to the point of removing the flag as a symbol of protest or freedom of speech, just because of its significance. And
Sure.
it was first introduced a long time ago, but
I,
every attempt they've made in Senate,
Colonel,
as the last time, it was lost by one vote to make it law.
God let you go on that note.